Today we have a special guest, Raylene Berry. She is Grace's Yoda of BlueJeans. And just kind of frame what we're doing is students have been going through a course. This is the fourth week of the class, and in this fourth week we've been talking about tools. What are some tools to help us be effective in teaching and making disciples? And BlueJeans is a tool.
It is.
And so just take a few minutes and share what are some of the things from your perspective that you've learned how to effectively use BlueJeans.
Recognize that BlueJeans is as a tool, it's not replacing anything that we don't already know about. Okay? When you're in a classroom, you have a classroom that you would control the environment. You would welcome your students in, you would interact with them, tell them the class rules and all those things. So I believe that this tool can be used the same way. But you just got to know where all the little clicks and buttons are. For example, when you first start a class, you would also tell them how to talk, how to raise their hand, and how to communicate with you as the professor or the moderator. So in BlueJeans, it allows you to do that. The first thing I'd recommend is letting them know that they can use the push-to-talk feature. Okay, by push-to-talk, if there's a space bar, and all they need to do is push it, they talk to you. And when they let it go, their mic goes back off.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that push-to-talk feature is really cool.
It is.
Opposed to just clicking and turn on their mic. By doing that, you have to remember to turn your mic off when you finish. Now, if you are a moderator and someone does that, because you can teach somebody how to do that, and they still might not do it. So my suggestion is that you have to be in tune to it. Just like you have that student that may be in class that's just talking nonstop, and you say, "Excuse me, could you be quiet for a second, or could you hold that thought for a second?" The same thing. You might not, actually you have a little safer environment because all you have to do is turn their mic off. You know, you don't even have to tell them anything. You just turn their mic off. And so by inside of BlueJeans, you have, by looking at all your participants, you have the ability to turn their mics off. Another thing that I also suggest is that you may have students that are in the classroom and they got a lot of stuff going on in the background. They're eating, all these things that you might not be able to control. You can also turn off the camera.
Well, just like for me, one time I was leading a group, and one of the first times I was leading in BlueJeans, and I had a student, and he had bad connection, and so there was always this noise in the background that was disruptive to everybody else. And at the time, I didn't know that I could mute him.
Exactly, and those are the perfect things. And you don't have to call him out. You don't have to be difficult with him. Just turn his mic off for him. And a lot of times, they don't have a clue that they're having these type of problems or what their problems is. Now, the other thing about moderating is that maybe they are having a problem and you're noticing it. And again, in a regular classroom, you would help them. Excuse me, are you having some problems? Can I help you? So you can do the same thing. Call them out in a nice way and then suggest, you know, maybe you need to call the support team, or, you know, maybe you need to reach out to BlueJeans right now. You know what, right now I'm going to turn your mic off for a second so that it doesn't continue. But now that we know what the problem is, you can press forward. But, you know, let them know so that they don't feel like they're like out there by themselves. You know, those are one of the biggest things that I find there's a problem. Also, muting on entry. There's a settings inside of BlueJeans that when a person enters BlueJeans, it doesn't make a noise, or it doesn't. You don't hear them immediately, or all their clatter or mouth. You know, all the things that they may do. So what you'll do is you'll turn this setting on that when someone comes into the room, just like they would come in a classroom, they would be quiet. You know, and it wouldn't it be great if a student came in a classroom with their backpack and make it quietly? Wouldn't that be awesome? You know, so so those are
just
some
like
features.
one time, you know, every once in a while I'll have a student because of their connection, they lose their connection and they drop out.
And they have to come back.
And then they come back in, and when they come back in, you're right in the middle of trying to make a point, and
you hear the sound.
And you lose the point.
Yeah, exactly. There's one other thing that may not always happen, but remember you're in control. Even though you're teaching or whatever you're guiding or facilitating, say you're recording and the recording stops, or not to worry about that, because all you need to do is when it stops, recognize if it's still blinking or whatever else, and then turn it back on. BlueJeans is smart enough to know that it's 2 pieces, and it will put them all together as one video. So you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, my world is falling apart because it stopped recording. So just turn it on and turn it back off, and start off right where you left off. Those are some of the biggest things that I noticed.
Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, is when you start the session, it automatically starts recording. You don't have to do anything, or is that a misnomer?
Well, there is a feature where you can have a meeting where it auto-records. Personally, after several years of training and testing with it, the feature is not a really good idea. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
So you have a classroom, okay, and you're the professor or the moderator, whoever is teaching, and you haven't come yet. Okay, so the students walk into the classroom and they start having these private conversations. Okay, they have these private conversations. Well, the moment 2 people join a BlueJeans session and it's auto recording, it starts recording.
That's right.
So these students are thinking they're in privacy.
Yeah.
And they're just they're talking about you, they're talking about the homework, they're doing all this conversation. It's being recorded.
Oh, okay.
So future students will be watching all that kind of interaction. And that should have been a private conversation, probably. So my recommendation is, as the facilitator or the moderator, that you start your own recording. You just have to remember to do it.
Yeah.
You really do, because you will forget.
Well, and the challenge is, when we talk about disciple making in a group, in a virtual classroom, the challenge is how do you make the connection? BlueJeans is an incredible tool to help us.
Exactly.
And some of us just getting comfortable with and learning, how to, connect students with students and students with the teacher.
When I first started training with BlueJeans, we had a small core group of faculty members that was using it. And one of the things that they continued to do was just talk, just like the talking head. And they would forget that there were students out there.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, and I would go to different classrooms, and luckily I was a student at the time, so I would say, Joe's on the screen. And so the professor was like, hey, Joe, you got a question. So you're going to have to call them out of their shell, especially if they're kind of new to it and they're kind of gung-shy. At first, you'll also get students that will come on, they don't have their camera on.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to encourage them. If you see their name on the list, call them out and say, hey, we would love to see you. We'd love to participate with you. Interact with them and just continue. The more you do it with them and the more they know you're going to do it, they will start interacting with you. And so that's my suggestion is, again, control your environment. Remember, you're still in charge, and call your students out just like you would in a classroom. Hey, you got that answer? The same thing.
Yeah. Well, and one of the other things was on the learning curve for me, if I got this right, was, there's some different settings to have different layouts in what you're looking at. And I always had to, once I learned it, to remember, okay, let's pick the layout that has the students, shown.
Let me talk about the layouts for a second. That's a good one, a good question. We individually control our layouts.
Okay.
That's one of the fun things and the reason why we chose BlueJeans. Your world, you may want to see all those students. Okay. The student on the other side may only want to see you.
Okay.
I mean, I hate to say it, they might not care that other people are on that class. So they control their own environment. Okay. A lot of times, as a student, I may only want to see your handout. So I can turn you off and just hear you talking and see it. So it allows the student to have their own control. So even though on your end you may see what you want to see, don't expect that that's what they're seeing.
Okay. And that's good to know.
They control their own environment. And they can't turn you off because they're not a moderator. They can't mute anybody. But how they see you, and it's really kind of cool to me because it allows me, I'm kind of blind and I might not be able to see the PowerPoint presentation and you, so I can turn you off for a little bit and turn you back on, and so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and just in closing, one of the things I thought was so cool is we had one student who every week he was different. He was in a different setting.
Right.
One time he was at his home and it was there. The next week he was on a bus using his phone. And the next week he was again using his phone in a coffee shop. Right. And it worked.
Right. And that to me was the glory of using BlueJeans is that they could be anywhere. You know, we're trying to be the seminary to the world.
Yeah.
So we didn't say only when you're at home or
Yeah.
only when you're in a good environment. We want them to be able to interact with us anywhere. I mean, I was in a class with a student that was sitting there at the hamburger place and he was eating his hamburger. Well, after a while, we got tired of seeing him eat his hamburger, but still, you know, but it was still great. But the other thing is he's sharing the gospel. People were walking by and asking him, well, what are you doing? I'm taking this class. You know, so it's really cool that you can do that anywhere.
Well, in a sense, it's all about what we're talking about when in discipleship. It's life on life, getting involved in each other's lives. And we're taking a moment out of a person's week.
Right.
And wherever they are, they have the capability of connecting up.
One of the things, though, there are some limitations for the multiple devices as a moderator. Okay. If you are the moderator, my suggestion is to be on a computer or maybe an iPad. A phone moderator, you can moderate there, but you don't have as much control as you would on a computer or an iPad or something, a device of that nature. The apps are slightly different. And so that's something I always want to remind people. I'm not saying that you need to do two devices, but it is good, it's helpful if you're presenting, okay, to have your computer with your presentation and you're sharing like that, and maybe a device over here so you can see your participants. That way you'll have, or even a separate monitor. And again, I don't want to tell people to go buy all these equipment. I'm just saying, if you have those things, it could help you.
And to a certain extent, you know, you're somewhat the anchor of how the experience, you know, happens.
Exactly. And think about it as the control room. You are now the control room. You know, and I know, you know, like I said, I'm the one who trained the faculty members when they first started with it. It was like, oh, all these things I have to manage. Well, I had to remind them, you were managing those things in a physical classroom anyway. When you walked in, you turned on the lights. You're the one that made sure all these things. You're still doing those things. They're just different things. You know, so we're just saying, kind of shift the mindset and recognize that you're using a technology that will allow you to have a little bit more control over your classroom.
Well, as we close, what's one thing you would tell a leader, moderator, teacher as they're beginning? This is the first time they've used BlueJeans as in that capacity. What's the one thing you'd tell them?
With all things, enjoy it. Just enjoy it. Recognize that. Don't let it intimidate you. It's just a tool. If you mess up, so what? You know what? Guess what? If you might drop out, it may be you that drop out. Now, so just come back in and say, I'm sorry. You know, enjoy the journey. And remember why we're doing it. We're all for His glory.
Great.
That's my biggest
Hey, well, thank you.
Thank you so
very
much
much.
for having me.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.